Lucas. Don't worry, the deer got away safely, and that was a shot that I didn't expect to get, and I didn't expect my little dog to take off running off after the poor baby deer. Anyway, it's July, and I was looking at some of my old YouTube stuff from a year ago to see how I was doing then, and I realized that in July I did a full garden tour, so thought it would be kind of cool to do another one a year later and see what's changed, what's the same, what's got better, what's got worse. So mosquitoes are really tough now, and that's why I'm wearing this super cool long sleeve shirt, and it is hot. But give you a view, overall view from down here, and then we'll go up top and I'm going to show you the whole thing from a little above, and then show you a shot from last year. So you can see it's a lot thicker, and it looks like there's a lot of weeds in there, and there are some, but a lot of this is just some intentional interplanting and some not so intentional interplanting, and I kind of went a little hippie with it this year, but I'll get into that when we get down there and just look at everything one at a time. So a second ago when I said that I went a little bit hippie in the garden this year, what I mean by that is I didn't stay totally focused on things that were, say, the highest profit crops or maximizing yield, because I did a bunch of interplanting and some of it didn't work out, and several things, and there's a lot of reasons of why I went hippie with it. One, I wanted to grow more food that I eat, and some of that happens to be lower value crops. Two, I just didn't have a great game plan and didn't do a lot of preparation that I said I was going to, so that's on me. But really pleased with what's going on here. Everything's a little bit behind what it was last year, and that's because my spring crops went later into the season, which was a good thing because I was getting great yields later into the year, and it stayed cooler longer. But that meant that all of my warm weather stuff has went in later and it's coming off later. So the okra did go in really late, and this is where I had the garlic bed down through here. You can't even see where one bed starts and stops now, but I had garlic and Austrian winter peas. You can see where I still got the chop and drop from the winter peas down below. Okra is late but coming along nicely. And in the middle, so there's two rows here and one 30-inch bed. Just like last year, there's a row of okra there and about 15 inches apart another down through there. And in the center, I wanted to make use of that space, so I tried a new variety of basil that I've never tried before. It's called dwarf Greek basil, and it's supposed to be a really compact plant, and you can see just how dense it is, and it's got a different flavor. It is basil. It's got slightly lemony flavor to me. It's supposed to have more of a anise flavor, but I'm picking up like citrus smell, which is really nice. And so, speaking of going hippie, I've got these through here. We've got Thai basil, another one, more so for one of my friends that really likes it, but I use it too, so it's all good. And Emily basil. This is just a variety of Italian basil that I really like. It's my favorite. And so I have those scattered out through there, mixed in. And part of what looks so weedy down through here is kale that's reseeded from some plants that I let go to bolt. And I probably should get these out. It is sort of crowding things out now and making it hard to get rid of actual weeds, but I've been getting harvest off of this, and so it was fun to do, but I need to get rid of it now. Haven't grown beans in several years, but I wanted some to eat this year, and I wanted to try something different anyhow. I love different plants, So I grew some green beans. This is a French fillet bean, is what it's called. It's a camellia, I think is the name. Instead of talking about them, we'll do a little harvest on this video, if that's cool with you. So, nice little bunch here from just a few feet a row. And it's getting late, so we'll pick this up tomorrow. Alrighty, day 2. Got a few more rows to finish up on this tour, so let's get on with it. Start with the 2 row of tomatoes here, because this is something I haven't done in a while, and I've never done it the way that I'm doing it this year. So 2 beds of tomatoes here, indeterminate tomatoes and determinate. So these are all aromas through here, and if we look straight down the row, you can see that the aromas are a lot more bushier than these, and that's because I'm pruning these. So with the indeterminate tomatoes, I'm pruning each plant down to a single leader. It's taking all the suckers off, and we'll look at that a little closer when I get up to them. Very similar to what I'm doing with the cucumbers there, and I'm using the same trellis system you can see here, where I'm just got T-post, PVC tees, and conduit running down through there with the string running up. And so let's look at the aromas. Start with, first of all, they're starting to bear already, and they're determinate, and they're kind of a short stocky bush, and they're looking pretty good. So I have the main leader on these wrapped around and around the string, and I'll continue to wrap them as they go up. But I haven't cut any of the side shoots off of this because it's indeterminate, and that's going to mess up the way it grows. Now, I'll be honest with these over here, the indeterminates. I think this is Abe Lincoln, I can't remember. But honestly, I waited too late, and when I pruned these up, I kind of butchered them up. But tomatoes are basically a vine, and they can take a lot of abuse. In fact, one of these plants through here, and I don't know which, actually had broke off at the ground, and a little shoot came up and made another plant. But let's talk about what it looks like to prune these and what a sucker is. So at the top of this one, I have 2 leaders, and I'll probably have to make a decision on which one of these to cut off. But at every node, where every limb is, or every leaf, there is a sucker that'll try to come out. Here's a good example here, and I don't want that, so I'm going to break it off, and preferably I'd use a knife or clippers, and I'll probably start cutting this foliage off as I come up and leave one main leader. If I was to leave these indeterminate tomatoes without pruning them, planted this closely together, it would just be way too dense. And there's a few cherry tomatoes. This is a yellow pear, I think. Some plants that died, something happened to them, and I interplanted basil in here because I had the plants. This is probably the plant that broke off at the bottom, and a sucker came up. So same thing here, I'll just wind the top around. You have to be careful, I did break some of these the other day. And yeah, these looked really bad for a while. I don't know if it was disease or pesticide drift, but the leaves curled up, and when I pruned them back and started over and trained them up these things, they looked better within a few days. So really pleased with that. Got some Thai basil interplanted. Wanted to keep those skips filled. I think I had one Roma die, and got a big basil bush here going. So here's the cucumbers. Did this same thing last year with this same trellising system, sort of like what Josh Satin has, except I put 2 trellises down a single 30-inch bed and did 2 rows of cucumbers. And did this last year, and it worked really well, so I'm going to try it again this year. And down the center, I didn't want to waste any space, I planted basil. And did change something this year. I planted those every 6 inches because my friend Catherine Ivy was doing it last year, and I really liked the way that it looked. I thought it was a good way to just maximize production. Not everything is basil. I've got some dill interplanted in there because I want to pickle some of these cucumbers. But really, they're late, but they're really thriving now. And the same pruning technique as last year. At every node, you want to take off the suckers. I'm a little behind on it, not as behind as last year, luckily. And you just keep wrapping that around the main leader, wrapping it around the string as it goes up. I'm not using clips to hold my plants up, and so far that's worked for me with this string, so I'm going to continue to do it. It's not so much the cost of the clips because I actually have some, but just the ease of not having to use them, and this is really easy. Now you might think these plants on the end are stunted, but they're not. These are actually not cucumber plants. These are a Korean melon. I don't remember the variety, but when they start coming off, I'll show you. And this is an experiment. I don't know if this is going to work with the melons, but I'm pruning them down to 1 single leader and trying to train them up here. These melons are actually really small, so I'm not worried about the weight of them pulling the trellis down. But they have a totally different growth habit from all these cucumbers. And you know, honestly, cucumbers and melons are almost the same thing. They're in the same family, and watching them grow and the seeds and everything, they're a lot alike. So I'm really pleased with this row. I'll get a ton of production. These cucumbers with this trellis system seems like the most production I can put out of a square foot as anything that I've tried in these 30-inch beds yet. All right, last but not least, got this area over here in the alleyway that I just took over this year, and I had some issues over here, so let's talk about it. So this bed, you might recall, had radishes down it. Did really well with the radishes, and then planted squash, and the squash came up really nice and was looking nice, and then the squash bugs came and decimated the crop. So I cut the last plants out that were still alive, and these are planted in green beans, and that should give me a fall harvest. So not much to talk about here. So here's the end of this bed. So I'm using this space right through here, but then this little corner of the alleyway basically was going to wind up not being used, and probably would have been a huge weed seed bed and would have just grown up. So this is a little crazy project of mine, just to use this space and keep it from getting weedy and get something out of it. So all of this is just dead plants, everything from my old pea vines to Johnson grass. I don't know what all. I've got all kind of plants. I'm just chopping them and dropping them here to try to smother out any weeds that are coming in. And I came in with a little fresh compost, made a little post hole with the post hole diggers, and planted a bunch of winter squash seeds. Now I'll talk about the variety later. It's kind of like a butternut type, but it's a breeding project by a seed company that's not finished yet, so there'll be some genetic variation. This is a personal thing for me, just for fun, and I do want some winter squash this year, and I haven't grown it in years. If you've never grown winter squash, it's really rampant, and these will be, because they're mosquito species, and they'll probably run back into these beds and cause issues. But for some winter squash, I'm willing to deal with it, and these plants are just a ton of fun. They're impossible to tame down that I've ever seen. So that's the test market garden. July 2020 looks a lot different than July 2019, and a lot different thought process from last year. I've learned a lot of things. a lot of things I apparently still haven't learned because I'm making some of the same mistakes. But this is a lot different than any garden I've ever did. So hope y'all like that. Leave me some comments. Tell me what I should do or shouldn't do with it. Any ideas, whatever. I appreciate y'all watching. Y'all be good. Bye.